All right, so good morning and thank you for joining us today. We have two major events happening. We have York Columbus City Schools Transition Charting the LifeCourse Training, 3 basic tools, and the Eclipse. So if you don't remember the date of this event, you can remember the Eclipse. Next slide. So we're coming today. Oh, first of all, my name is Deb Petermann, and I'm with the Center for Disability Empowerment. I will talk a little bit about that in a little bit. But today, what brings us here is a grant for the Ohio Developmental Disabilities Department, and under the name of the Ohio Family Network. And part of the grant, which started January of 2020, is including learning about and including charting the LifeCourse tools and framework, so that we could help each other in communicating and sharing how people can identify their goals, their personal things in a very, very simple way. Next slide. So I'm just going to introduce us really quickly. Celia Schloemer is my friend in Cincinnati, and she's the Family Support Coordinator in the University of Cincinnati University Center for Excellence in Developmental Disabilities. That's located in Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center. Celia is a person with lived experience as a sibling and as a parent of a person with disabilities. She is an ambassador and coach for Charting the LifeCourse. I come to you as a sibling, and I am the transition coordinator and community connector with the Center for Disability Empowerment. So we're going to try to show this simple video. It's the best video I've seen to describe what we do as a Center for Independent Living. So let's give it a shot, Celia.
What is a Center for Independent Living? A Center for Independent Living, you can call it a CIL for short, is a unique organization that assists people with disabilities in achieving and maintaining independence. The function of a CIL, though, is often misunderstood. So let's take a look at how a CIL actually works and what makes it different from other types of services. At a CIL, the people we work with are consumers, not clients or patients. This is different from case management, where clients are often told what to do, or from doctors who, in general, diagnose conditions and prescribe treatments. We believe that people with disabilities themselves can make the best decisions for their own care and lives. So at a CIL, consumers with disabilities choose the services and assistance they want that will give them the skills, resources, and opportunities needed to live life independently, just like everyone else. And because 51% of the staff and board of directors of a CIL are people with disabilities, the people making the decisions, running the programs, and sitting on the board can understand and relate to the consumer's needs. This model provides a level of peer support, consumer control, and expertise not found elsewhere. But providing services isn't enough, because historically, people with disabilities have been treated unfairly, marginalized, and face discrimination and negative attitudes. A CIL also works to shift the perception of disabilities to something ordinary and acceptable, something positive, and a part of life. This includes striving to change laws that will even the playing field, making sure that people with disabilities have the same access to public places as well as work opportunities and life choices as everyone else. The focus of a CIL is on changing the system rather than fixing the person, Ultimately, a Center for Independent Living is a living, breathing representation of independent living philosophy. To learn more, watch the video, What is Independent Living Philosophy?
All right. I love that video because it's so visual and it's very to the point of what we do as a Center for Independent Living. There are 12 Center for Independent Living in Ohio. We all work separately and we are nationwide. Next slide, please. So who we are. The Center for Disability Empowerment is a 501c3 non-residential Center for Independent Living that is driven by choice and direction of people with disabilities. Next slide. Our mission at CDE is to provide supports and resources for people with disabilities in order for them to be participants and contributors in their communities as they live, learn, worship, work, and play alongside people who do not have disabilities. This is very almost matching what Charting the LifeCourse goals are. Next slide. So we are federally mandated to offer 5 core services, one being information referral. You know, if we don't know, we find out. We offer independent living skills, training, finding training and community connectors to help if a person is setting a goal where they want to learn something or be connected to an organization or to towards their goal. That's what we help them out with. We do advocacy, whether it's systems and self-advocacy. We do transition services. We move people out of nursing homes, and once they are qualified, we find an accessible location. And we also offer transition for students ages 14 through 24, from high school to pursue further education, employment, interest, and more independence in the community. And we also offer peer support. Next slide. So I was trying to think of a quote that best describes the Charting the LifeCourse framework and the people that I've been connected with. I've never worked with a group of people that were so committed to supporting each other, and whatever the goal is of whomever contacts them. Again, if we don't know, we find out. But I love this quote because it really symbolizes what I have learned from working with Charting the LifeCourse ambassadors and the framework. It's amazing what you can accomplish if you do not care who gets the credit, by President Harry Truman. To me, what I found is the willingness to share their knowledge, as for example, with Celia Schloemer, who has a great vast amount of knowledge, especially with transition. I welcomed her to co-lead this for me. Next slide.
Deb, I'm going to jump in here. I want you guys to know, as Deb has felt that experience, that if and when you learn more about this, you're interested and you want that level of support, we're set up to do that. And we'll talk about that later. But just know that that's just not something cool for Deb. That can be for each and every one of you as a group or individually.
Yes. Thank you, Celia.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about 3 basic tools. Some of you may have looked at this, or maybe you have had a quick course, or maybe have done a Zoom with me, just sharing how these tools can be used. So you're not going to be able to see the writing on here because I'm trying to get these on the screen, but we are going to cover the 1-page person-centered description. The middle one is the trajectory, and the last one is the integrated star. Okay, go ahead, next slide. So this is the only thing I'm going to read to you. The Charting the LifeCourse Framework was created to help individuals and families of all abilities and of all ages develop a vision for a good life, think about what they need to know and do, identify how to find or develop supports, and discover what it takes to live the lives they want to live. Individuals and families may focus on their current situation and stage of life, but may also find it helpful to look ahead, to think about life, a full life experience that will help them move toward an inclusive, productive life in the future. Their core beliefs, as I said before, are very similar to CDE. all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their own life aspirations. Okay, next slide. So before I move further, I'm going to ask Celia, please help us understand why Ohio and what's happened in Ohio since this introduction of this framework.
All right, and I threw into the chat, I asked people to put in the chat whether or not they've ever heard of Charting the Life Course, if they've been exposed to it, and if where. If you want to put your little story in there or just a statement of yes or no, I'm going to give Dan a huge thumbs up for jumping in there. I'm a real interaction person, as is Deb. I want to thank personally the people that have their cameras on. That doesn't say anything about those of you that don't, but I'm just a person that has to have somebody to make eye contact with to be comfortable. So thank you so much. So Charting the Life Course broadly in Ohio. So Charting the Life Course began in 2012 with actually prior to that, with a conversation at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. It is now a national, I'm going to call it a movement, in where we have committed as a state, like 21, 22 other states, to say that idea of all people have the right to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in their community, as a belief, as a core belief of the state, of people supporting everyone, and specifically people with disabilities. As transition coordinators, you guys are in a really cool spot because you're right there where we're making that move from where it's kind of done alongside to where it's kind of picking yourself up by your bootstraps and doing it on your own, that self-determination place, right? And that was not lost on us when we started this work in 2015 and 2016, but it started out of the Ohio Department of Developmental Disabilities, not in the schools, right? And I came out of a role within schools supporting families of kids with disabilities. And so when I saw it for the first time, I'm like, this has to be in school. And it took us a while because we know that our Ohio Department and our Ohio Department of Education, the Department of Disabilities and Education, don't necessarily work together all the time, but wouldn't it make sense? So in that transition space, especially, so we began that relationship, that conversation, and we tapped into an amazing person named Sarah Brooks out of the Department of, oh shoot, something in
Education.
Yeah, Department of Education, but it's the, anyway, Sarah is awesome. And Sarah is also a Charting the Life Course, working on becoming a Charting the Life Course ambassador, but she was first exposed to the work, much like I was, in relationship to our kids that we were supporting. And so, and our kids at transition age. And so when she came across us and was realizing the breadth of the work out of the Family Resource Center of Ohio, which is out of NYSONGR, which is your university's Center for Excellence there in Columbus, if you guys are familiar with them. We have two in Ohio. That's when things really started to churn. And we now and I think this is what Deb really wanted me to focus on, have a contract with the Ohio Department of Education to be able to provide you all better understanding of the framework and the tools, how you might use them where you are, how you can introduce it to families, and get kids and people at transition age to understand what it means to want to live, love, work, play, and pursue their life aspirations in their community, and not just go to a space or get a job, right? Because there's so much more to it. And it's that self-determination of figuring out what I want and motivating me from that space that I think makes Charting the Life Course special. So we now are in contract with them. The Ohio Department of Education has more Charting the Life Course ambassadors than I think any organization across the US as one organization. There will be, at the end of this school year, there will be 94, with another, I think, 15 to 32 being possibly added in the fall. You don't need to be an ambassador to do this work. There are schools and ESCs that have decided they want an ambassador in the district to be able to support each other and kind of be the go-to person within their district. This is not mandated. It's not mandated in the Ohio Department of Developmental Disability. It's not mandated in schools. It is something that they want to provide as a resource for all of you in understanding another tool for your toolbox. Please know, this is not an expectation that you throw away everything you've been doing and start something new, because I think if we ask a teacher to do that in 2024, we might not make it out of the room, because we're asking so much of you guys. So that idea that this can be integrated, one tool, one concept, one principle into what you're already doing, it can hold it up what you're already doing. It can make, I didn't really know why I was doing it. I didn't know why it worked, but oh my gosh, this is why it works. So that principle or that concept behind it is going to help you help the families that you support and the students that you support. The first person that I ever really saw their eyes light up and got to work with when I started this work was a teacher in Sycamore schools. And her name's Kelly Flaughter. And she then paid for herself to become an ambassador and has integrated this into her entire post-secondary classroom in Sycamore School District. And that's down here in Cincinnati, and it's on the outskirts of the city. But when I talk to folks at Cincinnati or at Columbus Public, I want you guys to know that two places that this has really taken hold in very different ways are Princeton City Schools, which is one of our most diverse school districts in Ohio. And they have gone very deep, from their parent mentor to their transition coordinators to those supporting at-risk students. It's not just about disability. So they're really finding nicks and crannies for little pieces and big pieces of this. They've presented nationally at the showcase that UMKC puts on about their work. And they're a great resource for tapping into what have you done and why did you do it. Cincinnati Public Schools, I say, is my tried and true, my turtle. That idea that slow and steady wins the race. Lisa Froelich there, who oversees a lot of their transition stuff, has said to me, why do you get so excited about us? We haven't done much. And I'm like, no, you've just never given up, and you've never not created an opportunity to share it with one more person, one more family, one more teacher, one more classroom. So I hope you can listen to this with that kind of a lens. And hopefully as we move on, you can ask more specific questions. Did I do what you needed me to do, Deb?
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, next slide. So I'm showing you pictures because I am a visual learner. Can you guys see me circling the top left? Maybe not. All right, so on the top left, you have the person within the context of family. You know, we currently on the left, we would have the person that's surrounded by the family and then the community. And then we've moved to the middle where we have the person surrounded by services, surrounded by family, and surrounded by community. Not everybody gets services, as you know. And so if you look at the circle on the right, it has person wrapped around by family and then wrapped around by community. And you'll see these little stars. So if you could move that slide over to the right, Celia. So these little stars are just samples of one of the three basic tools that we're going to be talking about, which go right back to where you were, Celia, where you see those little stars. They're not wrapped around. They're a little bit with the person, a little bit with the family. They're locating in the community. So this is the direction we should go, because so many families are eligible for services or can find resources, but we can be more creative in finding assistance for them. All right, so go ahead and make it smaller. So on the left, it's just a basic thing. And by the way, I am going to be providing the PowerPoint, which has live links, as well as once we're recorded, I will edit it and send you all the links. So you could just kind of sit back and relax a little bit. So the integrated star, that's the formal name of the one on the right, just covers across the whole life course. So we will get to that in a moment. Next slide. So when we're talking about Charting the Life Course, we're considering life domains and stages and life stages. So from what I understand, most of you folks are transition. So you're working with 14 through graduation. But when we start talking about all these life domains and stages, that we're trying to look at what's appropriate for that age group and for that person, and work on helping them and supporting them. So let's go ahead with the next one. So this I'm going to show you really quickly because I'm going to have the link for you. This is the blue-gray book. Can you see it okay? So what's really awesome is we list the having a mental block here, the life domain and the stages. So everything is in this booklet. So if you start with your preschool, then elementary, whatever. So the top of the page tells you what is the life domain. And so you don't have to figure it out. For the most part, you could just look at this little booklet, you could download it, and it lists everything from all the life domains, which, daily life and employment. And so I targeted the transition age part just for you. And so what's wonderful about these tools, you can say, yeah, we need to work on this. It's great to have you thinking about ways to have conversations with the parents as well as caregivers and guardians. So I love this tool. I recommend it. So I'm going to give you a page with links at the end of this, and you could go on their website and download it. And by the way, all the tools are free. Next slide.
I'm going to go, I'm doing a training tomorrow for those of you that might have it as your schedule in the afternoon, where I'm going to be going deeper with that particular tool. And this is based on anticipatory guidance, the idea of knowing what's next. We always say parents don't know what they don't know, right? And so that idea of anticipating, and you guys are at an age where we've kind of held back as family members. And often you're like, no, this is time to engage. We need your help to do this. We're not going to be here in a year or so. So this gives them kind of a standing ground of things to think about. It often supports the ideas that you guys are trying to get them to think about. But when we were thinking about them leaving school, we don't want to talk about it, or maybe we're not engaged at all. And so this piece kind of gives that student the ability to think about it too, or to talk about it or express it. And those of you that are working with students who don't communicate typically, or you feel like their cognitive ability is not going to be one where I'm going to be able to tap into this idea, it's amazing what we can do. And we all at Charting the LifeCourse go back to that right to have the conversation, however we have it at the place where we are, meeting us where we are. And so I'm hoping you'll take a look closer at the link, because we can go deeper with this later on. But we just wanted to make sure you saw it and knew what it was and it was created by parents. Parents said, these were the experiences, these are the questions that we wish people would have asked us, so we wouldn't feel so fearful or so uncomfortable with where we are.
Thank you. Next slide. So I wanted to give you the details here where we can, you can review at a later date, or you can review when you look at the PowerPoint again. So, so don't be overwhelmed, because once I start showing you the tools, you're gonna go, okay, I can do this. This is very easy. So the one slide is also part of the grant with the DODD. We offer webinars and face-to-face on the 3 buckets of support. So I'm just going to list the name of them. Discovery and navigation, or knowledge and skills. Second one is connecting and networking, socio-emotional well-being. And the third, the goods and services day-to-day support. So these are the different kinds of trainings that a lot of the Charting LifeCourse ambassadors have done or are doing. And actually on our, we'll put the link of our CDE's YouTube channel for the list of all the trainings that we've done so far. Next slide. Just stay there. All right, so I have a question, and if you can open up, you can share your unmute yourself. What are common things when we meet someone new that we ask them? Maybe where do you live? What do you do? There's all kinds of different questions that we ask when we're talking to a stranger. So today, let's start a conversation with 3 basic questions. What do people like and admire about you? Not what you can do. What is important to you? And how best to support you? So I'm going to introduce the first I'm having a mental block here. Next slide. Let's do that. So we're all about person-centered. So this is nothing new to you, but this little simple tool can help your parent or your caregiver or help you in asking the question so that you can have a better idea who your student is. Now, anyone can, at any age, disability or not, can use these tools. So this is the one-page person-centered description. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the questions, and then I'm going to give you my personal example. So what do people like and admire about me? So sometimes we feel, then what's important to me? And then the last one is how best to support me. So let's go up to the top. So a lot of times, we're really focused on what people can't do. And so what I love about this is it challenges us to think about what the person, what we like and admire about them. So it's a very positive thing. So I'll just throw this out here. What do people like and admire about me? I don't know. I like challenges. I like meeting new people. I'm learning to become a better listener. Let's go ahead and go down. And so what's important to me would be, well, my family, my work, my pet, or playing guitar, which I don't. But that's where you would fill in, the focus on what is important to myself. The last thing is how to best support me. So I've used this tool on as to how to make friends. Because when we're learning to meet people and become friends, we give a give and take conversation or sharing. So I'm going to share that I am hearing or hard of hearing. And the best way to support me is to look at me. So if you're talking quietly, I can look at your lips, or I can see what you're saying to me. If you walk out of the room, I won't hear you. If you mumble, I won't understand you. And so sometimes when I misunderstand you, please don't laugh at me. It's a reason why I misunderstand you. So I'm asking as a friend, would you repeat the question or say it in a different way? Let's show that large.
Yeah,
Celia.
I was going to add that somebody added in the chat that it reminds them of what they use in their informal assessments. And we have many folks that are using this because it's colorful and it's in a worksheet, and it gives them time to kind of think and step away. So that is a great way to use this. So go ahead. Thank you, Melody.
So the other cool thing about these pages is that they're fillable. So either you could handwrite them, or you could type up what you want in there. So I am a terrible handwriter, as you could see on the right. But sometimes that's all you have. You might only have, you'll start thinking this way. You may only have a napkin to ask them, what do they like and admire about you? What's important to her, and how best to support her. So I'm giving you 2 examples here to look at, but you have just experienced the one-page person-centered description. So
and I'll say times that they use these too is when you want to start doing student-led events, student-led meetings, pulling them into their IEP meetings when they don't know why they're there and they're really uncomfortable and there's all these adults. Have something like this guiding that conversation for them, simply to hear what people like and admire about them, and choose somebody from the community, somebody from home, somebody from school. It's a game changer for folks. And so these kids don't get to hear that very frequently. And often in those 4 walls, in formal situations, it's more about what they can't do. So that idea of where they get to say, this is what I need, and this is what people like and admire about me, is just a beautiful space. You don't need this form, but being that person-centered conversation that we want to see take place is super meaningful and can be a game changer for kids and families. Go ahead, Deb. I'm sorry.
No, chime in anytime. We have already had that agreement. So let's go ahead and do the next slide. So do any of you have questions about the one-page person-centered page? Maybe in the chat you can say it's helpful. Does this look difficult?
Here we go. Sonia said that she loves the idea with more participation. And this is really, you guys are at the perfect age to pull forward that student voice. And I say this as a mom. I was not ready for that, for her voice to be more important than mine in that room. I had been that advocate all along. And so if I would have had these tools, my daughter's now 30. If I would have had these tools then, what a game changer for our relationship on a lot of levels, to begin that as a conversation. So I just really appreciate the simplicity of it, as Deb was just bringing up, the ease of it, the fact that it exists, it's colorful, it doesn't look like a piece of your paper. It looks like something that belongs to me as a mom, or belongs to me as a student. And the beauty of it too is it's theirs, and there's two forms of each of these documents. So you see this one says, what do people like and admire about me? There's one for the parent to fill out that's separate. I don't get to decide that for her. What I write is what people like and admire about my family member, because what I like and admire or want her to say is very different, or want her to see is very different. So what I believe she needs to best be supported, and what she believes she needs to be best supported, may be two different things. And you as teachers could do one that says what you believe is best for the student. What does that do when you have three of them? It creates a rich conversation about where are we going to focus? What are we going to do? And everybody feels heard, which doesn't happen much at, when we're in the stage where we've got a tumultuous teenager who's trying to get their voice heard. So that's what I appreciate about it. Anybody else? I'd love it if somebody would unmute just to humor us and have a conversation. If you want to be that person, it would be lovely.
I want to add, there are different ways people are using this. We serve children and students that may be medically fragile. And so having this person-centered page filled out really would be helpful should they have to go to the hospital. So we ask what they like and admire, what's important, and how best to support me. Nurses and doctors don't have time to learn about the patient, but if that information is provided maybe by their bedside, you could laminate it. And of course, you could always change these and update these forms, but it's very helpful so that people could look, oh, he says he can't lay on his left side because of his cerebral palsy. So, or I don't want to watch cartoons all day, put on the movie channel. So these are things that just kind of help people serve the community that we serve. Another thing is you can have a parent use that to introduce their child or student to a new teacher, or in the beginning of the year, so that you as a teacher have a little guideline. He's into this, and don't do this, or so it's information that a parent caregiver can complete on behalf of the child, the student. And so that's where some other uses that can be used for this. So we expect that the goals and the topics will change as a person goes about their weeks, their months, their days, and their years. Okay, next slide. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce the integrated star. So in the beginning, we have those little stars, that are kind of placed in the community and the family at large. So the integrated star encourages access to 5 main areas of support. So to me, a basic use of this kind of thing is to it's almost like a bird's eye view of where the person is right now. So on the top, now we're going to talk about there's a person's strengths and assets. What can they do? Not what they can't do, but what can they do? And so you might fill this out yourself, or maybe the student will help you, or even the family may help you with that. And to the right, you have relationships. Are they connected with their family? Do they have friends? Do they have things in common? Do they, have acquaintances? And on the bottom right, you have eligibility specific. So this is kind of, some of this information you may already know and don't need to know, but knowing that, if they get government paid services based on disability or diagnosis, such as special education or Medicaid. To the bottom on your left is community-based. We should be able to have access to every part of the community. So people might say, I like to go to the library, I like to go out to dinner, I like McDonald's, I like bowling. That's an area of interest that you can type in or write in. And then technology. So is the person able to use an iPad or FaceTime or all the different ways of using technology? Do they use assistive technology for speaking? Alarm clocks, all these things that help provide support for the person in their life at this point in time. Next slide. So there's two forms. They're very simple and they are fillable. So you can focus on what's right now on your upper left, where the student is right now, or you can do a now, which would be a goal, what's happening now, and in the future, what's the goal in the future. So this helps us in, really thinking about long-term, short-term goals. What's cool about this is that it's, again, fillable, and so you could put anything in these spaces. In fact, sometimes you may not even be filling out one of the day-to-day decisions, like eligibility. That's nothing to do with you. So you might work on technology and maybe on community-based. So these tools can be used whatever way that you want. Okay.
And the nice thing about eligibility is you may not be involved with whether or not, but it's a very simple way to put it on a future list for a family to say, have you connected with your county board? Because I think that relationship is going to be important. Do you want to? It could say in the middle of the star, who to invite to their first transition meeting. And you could say who from the community should come that knows you or you want to know. Who comes from eligibility that knows you or you want to know. And we're at those pivotal points where we're having these big conversations. It can just map where we are, or that idea of I put in the chat, what do we want to do next? How do we bump up our game? And encouraging families to have a to-do list that says, oh, I need to call the county board before our next IEP meeting. Oh, and then it doesn't all fall on you guys because it becomes this team effort. That's the way I imagine it in my head.
Okay, so I have two examples here, and I'm going to tell you about Mr. G, but these support stars can be used again for anyone. So I met Mr. G, I was running out of the office, and I'm just learning how to use these tools, but I memorized kind of the different areas here. So these areas like, relationships, community-based, technology, all these things are things that you guys address. So Mr. G is an older man and I couldn't find a form. So I started talking with him, and once I found out what he was interested, we got together and did a Zoom, and I filled out these personal strengths. So when I first talked to him, I said, he was calling about housing. And I said, what's the dream? And he said, I want to help people. And so he told me how he was doing. I asked him how it was going, and he said, not very well. So we agreed to meet in a Zoom, and we filled out this form. So when I met him, he is a techie guy. I mean, this guy, if you looked at a picture of a radio announcer, he had the microphone, the laptop and all the equipment. That was his deal. And so when we were filling out this information, if you look here look at this at large, if you could make it a little larger, you will see that he's pretty weak in relationships. He has mental health, and he lives in a community that supports people with mental health. And the staff knows him. He has friends in that community. He is not connected to his immediate family. So when we also talked, I was looking at technology, and he was no stranger to technology. he had a laptop, the headset with a microphone. He knew how to do internet searches, Zoom setups. He runs the Facebook page for the organization. He also does their website. I mean, he's be a person's dream, right? And so we did that in October, and I called to check in on him right after Thanksgiving. And so I said, and he gave me permission to share this, by the way. I said, how was your Thanksgiving? He said, it was not really good. I called the suicide hotline, and he said, I wasn't going to hurt myself. I just needed to talk to somebody. So I said, Greg, what are we going to do for Christmas? And so I said, well, what about if we did something like 12 days of Christmas? And he offered to do a Zoom at the same time every day, so that if people want to tap in, they can be connected with this community. And so he got super excited about it. He said, I'm going to go talk to the staff. And I said, no. I want you to think about this. I'll give you a full day to create a plan. Well, within 24 hours, he had a plan for 12 days of holiday cheer. Excuse me a second. So he created that. And so what he did is on each day, he had, event or activity or several activities. And then they created a flyer to pass it among the people in that community. So if we're looking at this star right now, if we look at the middle star, we can change. Now that he did one goal, we worked on another goal. And that goal was he wants to learn how to do a podcast. And so this is where I am not savvy on technology, but I know some people through my social capital who know how to do this. So I connected them with Mr. G, and they mentored him. And so these are also ways that people have interest for us to look beyond what we usually do and think about how we could connect them with the community where they live. Next slide. Okay. Are there any questions on the integrated support star?
So Deb, I want to tell you, there's been a little bit of a conversation going on just thinking about different places of it, but somebody had said that just like the idea of it giving other areas to look besides eligibility, because I put a comment in the thing that says, you guys are one corner of the star. And I can tell you as a mom, when I was advocating, I got pretty fixed on what school should do, right? I should all over school. But if I had seen this star and went, oh, I can do this, and this is available in my neighborhood or my community, I can have her contribute here through technology. We have these relationships. I did that with my other kids without blinking, but I was so focused on school has to be the answer along the way, because we had this piece of paper that went with her, right? That said that you guys were my peeps, right? And so this idea of kind of breathing a little bit and saying, where are all the places? Because when school shut down, that eligibility corner went away in COVID. And families that only had that were suffering and struggling. But same with DD system, where everything was done with the county board and that shut down. What do we have? When we do this, we have this balanced approach that if this one's not working for right now, we can go over here or over here. And if those areas of the stars are blank, we've work to do. How can we help the family connect in those places? So just a great tool. Anybody else have thoughts or comments? So somebody asked, how do you approach asking about each area to learn about the individual without leading to too much changing to yes, no questions? Okay, so let me make sure I'm understanding. So because you're limited to yes, no questions, it feels like a big laundry list of questions maybe, rather than, a conversation. Is that kind of what you're saying? Karen, can you unmute? Would you do that for me?
Sure. Can
Great.
you hear me all right?
Yep, absolutely. Go ahead.
No, I just, I do a lot of yes, no questions with my students currently to get to some of these answers, because I don't always feel like they can really come up with a list of qualities or a list of skills or whatever. We're trying to seek some of that information. And so I feel like the conversational approach is much more authentic and natural, but I also don't want to lead the conversation too much or revert back to my yes, no questioning to get the information without it being a conversation. So
So there's lots of different ways to do that. And so, like I said, and I think the part of it is that you're feeling compelled that this falls on you, right? You got to get this information. But there's lots of people that are holders of this information, right? My daughter's sister knows a lot about her in areas that I don't, depending on what's at the center of that star, right? Her employer knows a lot of things about her that I don't, that might go into that star. So part of it is getting past it just coming from that conversation between the two of you. One of the things that Kelly Flaughter did is she had opportunities for them built into the curriculum where they were drawing about it or writing a journal prompt about it or going home and having a conversation with mom and dad about it. So they might have taken one piece at a time rather than sitting down and filling out a tool. You might just, for your own reflection, put down what you know in a star for a child, what I see, right? And say, boy, we did this and we were talking about what we thought his strengths were, what we thought relationships that were really important to him, how we saw him using technology, and hand it back to the family and go, what would you add? And because by the end of it, you have this whole enriched conversation. Maybe they're really good buddies with a coach or with maybe they've got a job with the football team, or maybe they know somebody that they have lunch with every day. And you could say, what do you want to add here? So it's not just going to fall completely on you. And it does take some time. And Kelly said, in the beginning, it takes a little more time, but by the end, it saves her time. Because when she's getting to those places where she has to really reflect on where they've been and what they've done and what they've accomplished, it's all right there. Does that help, Karen? And we'd go deeper if we did additional training. I want to watch our time. So does that help?
Certainly. And that definitely keeps perspective in mind. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Deb.
Okay, next slide. And the third form is the trajectory. So, I don't know how many of you remember this kind of thing in math, but typically when the arrow is pointing up, it's the positive. And in this case, if we have the starting point of the person, we would ask them, well, what is a good life to you? And then write down their answers. Sometimes people only focus on what they don't want. So that's where they might start, is on the bottom box. It's what I don't want. I don't want to live alone. I don't want to, live in a group home. I don't want to go to college, whatever it is, what they don't want. And sometimes talking with that, they start seeing what they do want. And so the two boxes on the left, the upper part is, what is your plan to get to your goal of your good life? And the bottom one is maybe what experiences that you don't want to repeat, things that you don't want to do that might take you to where what you don't want in your life. So next form. Again, these forms are fillable. So as you see here, just another way of looking at this. So we would put the person in there where the little blue person is, and then ask them what their vision is for a good life, and then and what they don't want. And so the boxes in between is, what are your plans towards that goal? So if you would make that smaller, I just want to share my personal trajectory. All ambassadors have to take this class as well as do their homework like this. So I decided in my vision of a good life was that I would declutter my home. I did not want my daughter to shake her fist at heaven at me for not getting it done while I was alive. So a lot of people struggle with clutter. So I'm going to go ahead and fill in. I'm going to ask you guys, in the plan towards decluttering, what are some things I need to do? What would you write in there? And just unmute yourself.
This is where we need your help. Or we're going to get stuck here and not get done.
All right, I'll give you a clue. Boxes. Getting
Need box-
boxes.
Rick, do you have any ideas of what you could add? I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Definitely containers for keeping trash and so forth. What you're going to keep and what you're going to get rid of, and what may be donated or passed down to the children or other people.
Exactly.
Melody, would you add something since you answered before? Would you be so kind? Anybody else? Sonia, I know you put something in, so you're willing to banter.
I'm thinking something as simple as you're going to need time.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and
would, and you may even need help.
Amen.
Yeah.
Tricia. That's okay, Melody. Thank you. I didn't mean to put you on the spot. Go
I would
ahead.
need a schedule so I didn't get overwhelmed, so that I gave myself a reasonable amount to do by a reasonable due date, because otherwise I would overwhelm.
And so I watch what happened there. I need a schedule. I don't want to be overwhelmed. So know that there's a correlation between those two boxes. They can only come up with what they don't want. You can flip and go, well, if you don't want that, I hear that you want this. There's a correlation. Go ahead, Deb.
well, I'm going to talk about the two left-hand boxes. Okay, so these are things that we may or may not know about a person. But it is important because it does impact the choices that they made. So you can list on, what your positive past experiences would be. But in my case, I went right down to the hard stuff. So for me, we all lose significant people in our lives, and I've gotten rid of a lot of their stuff. But I'm going to share with losing my daughter. So I still, 18 years later, still have her glitter and her pretty jewelry because she was 18 and a half and all these things. And I even have her old phone. And so, there are things that we need to unload in our life to let go of. So I figured out, why not? I don't want to keep these items, but I don't want to forget in that weird way. So why not take a photo of that item? At least I'll have it maybe in my camera for years, but it's one way of helping people to let go of things that were important to them. So as you can see, this could be a difficult process if people are working out hard stuff. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. And then this, there's also different forms for this. This one is geared towards the family perspective. This is what I think is good for them and what we don't want. And so we have the personal perspective and we have the family perspective. Okay, next slide. All right. So what do you guys think about the trajectory tool? Thumbs up, thumbs down?
Can somebody say how they might see help having this information, especially from a family? I'm sure you tap into this into students, but why do you think knowing their past and what has influenced what they think they've done really well as a family moving this student forward, and their what they've done that's problematic, or what's happened to the family that's problematic, how would that help you in your role?
I don't know if this answers that question specifically, but I like that you ask the question, what do I not want? Because I think that that's something that I've never really asked before, but that can help guide us as to what to avoid, or, I think it's going to help us get the family on our side so that we can work together more if we know what we can avoid, or if there's, to delve deeper into it, if there's something that they put there that maybe we really do need to explore. So
Absolutely. And I can tell you, we learn a lot about people's trauma, especially parents of kids with disabilities. Those fears, I mean, you are in the center of the tornado when it comes to fear for families. And so that idea of tapping into that a little, but I also want to remind you, it is very intimate work. And so you might not be able to see it in the first question or ask. It might be more of a conversation as we build trust, starting with what they don't want. What is your biggest fear of what's going to happen? So we can make sure we address that. So you're doing it from a place of trying to build that trust, because trust is something that really is problematic in 2024. I feel like much more, even more than before. So that idea of how do we create this relationship in a short period of time that's supposed to influence the rest of their lives? That's a lot to put on you guys. And so having these conversations, and most importantly, making time for them, for families to feel heard and say, I'm afraid I'm going to fall off the cliff. That's what I've heard. I'm afraid he's not going to qualify with the county board and he's going to sit on the couch and play video games all day. Okay, let's talk about what you want then. I'm afraid all his friends are going to go off to college and they're going to forget about him. All legitimate fact-based fears, right? So how do we prepare for that? What are we doing proactively to tap into that? So thank you, Sonia, for bringing that up. All right. Deb, I know, are we going to stop at 9?
Next slide. Okay, so we've gone through these 3 forms, and I may have sent them ahead, but I can resend them, plus the links that are associated with Charting the LifeCourse tools. So let's go ahead and go next slide. So I'm going to ask Celia to talk about what we would like to do for you at Columbus City Schools in the fall.
So we are trying really hard at the coaxing of not only those that oversee parent mentors, but also the coaxing of the Office for Exceptional Children and Sarah Brooks and the work that they're doing there to get word out about this tool, this framework, this movement in Ohio and students. And I'm telling you, they have not just stopped with making this available to you and to your school to work hand in hand with you. And one option is something called guided implementation. If you do this in the fall and you love it, and you want a group of teachers to go deep with it and be like held across time for a period of time doing it, that's an option. The other part of it is self-advocates. There's a new program that's developed that there's a training called Project STIR, which is a self-determination training for young adults with disability. And they're bringing it into the schools, and they're doing pilots this year within the schools in that first month after school gets out, where they're going to do an in-person Project STIR training within a couple of districts. If that goes well, we're going to continue that. I would love to invite you guys to look at things like that. And it's Synergy, which is a conference in the fall around self-determination overall that we're hoping we're going to start getting high school students into and those kids in transition into, because when they start seeing adults with disability up on stage presenting and talking about what they're doing with their lives, again, when we see the expectation and that it's possible, we as family members and we as students start thinking differently about what we're able to do. So just let me know your thoughts there, but we want to do a training in the fall with you guys. We can focus on transition. We could focus specifically with a team. It's going to be kind of tweaked by you, but we can do a really deep 3-hour training. I went into Cincinnati Public and did an all-day PD day right before they started school with all their multi-disability classrooms. So we've done it lots of different ways. So yeah, it's going to be open, but what we want to hear is whether you're interested. So when Deb does her, Deb, you have an evaluation that we're going to send out a survey?
I do not, but I am going to send all the links. So I will bring the Project STIR. It's just a matter of getting connected with Rick, I believe, to set up a date when this might work.
And I can send a survey to you guys this afternoon that kind of just says, what did you learn? Did you learn something? That helps us with our funders. And that's what makes us available to you for free, because the Department of Education will get a notice that you guys did a training and this is what you thought. So if you guys would be willing to do that for me, there's an area for comments of what you'd like next, and we can formulate that together. Rick, we can work directly with you. You could send a couple people my way and say, work with them. They got this, however you want to do it. But I'm just excited that Columbus City Schools is willing to, when I first looked at this, I said, if we can't get this to school, we're going to be shooting ourselves in the foot, because you guys are doing so much, and it's where families learn what they can know and what they can think about. So I appreciate all of you so much, and we'll get that survey to you.
All right, let's go to the next one.
I'll get it out. I think a big part for me, or what causes me to buy in is just the self-advocacy for students. So to put the student first and get them to kind of start speaking for themselves a little bit more. We talk about doing student-led IEPs and some of those things, but a lot of our students are really shy and don't want to speak up. So